we go. It's time to talk some hockey. I'm Doug Lattuca. He is the voice of the Vegas Golden Knights on the radio side, Dan D'uva. We're live for nighttime at noon.
Hi, Doug.
How are you doing?
I have a question for you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you're on the air talking to me, I want to know who's running the Golden Knights radio social accounts right now.
Well, I've got it up on my computer.
So
We're
you are
ready to
double
go.
tasking. Is that what you're saying?
That's what we do.
Wow.
Here. We multitask.
Multitasking, and I'm amazed to see what you come up with next.
Yeah, fired up for this show. Should be great. We're on Fox Sports Las Vegas, streaming on the Vegas Golden Knights digital streaming channels as well. Huge win for the Golden Knights yesterday in San Jose. Another win against the Sharks. And Tomas Hertl. He's been spectacular.
Who could have imagined? And that he has been on both sides of this rivalry over the course of 9 seasons now. Vegas has still never lost a regulation game in San Jose in the regular season. And they've won 11 straight against the Sharks, 4 this year. And would you believe that Tomas Hertl, in 800-plus NHL games, never had a 5-point performance? And then he puts up 5 in San Jose and route to a 7-2 victory. I would say we could have this discussion, Doug. If you went up and down the Knights roster, who has been the most consistent player, and I'd say prerequisite is you have to play in all or near all the games, I would probably say it's Tomas Hertl. Normally I'd say Braden McNabb, but for the first time in years and years, he's actually missed some time now. But given that Hertl has played in every game, and he's just as steady as it goes for the role that he's expected to perform, I would tell you that he's has been the most consistent Golden Knight, and now 39 points this year.
Yeah, and with all the injuries that the Golden Knights have dealt with up front, both and on the back end, it seems like he's been a fixture right there. No Brett Howden yesterday, missed Jack Eichel for a bunch of games earlier on in the season, and he just chugs along. You can put him wherever he needs to, wherever he can fit in the lineup, and he seems to produce.
Yeah, and the interesting thing over the last few games is that Hertl has not had his very familiar winger, Pavel Dorofeev. And I went back and tried to find the game by game and examine the last time that Hertl and Dorofeev at even strength were not together. And it's, we're looking at more than a season since those two guys were not on the same line for more than a handful of shifts. So that's interesting, and I it's something that we've talked about with Bruce with respect to balancing things out, try to get some guys jump started. There we go. Oh, hello. We are back.
Okay.
We don't know what
no more
happened.
distraction. We'll just leave the Hello Kitty right there.
That's a tease, if I've ever heard or seen
Yes,
one.
it
For
is.
those of you listening on the radio, we are still here. We had an audio malfunction, but now we have a Hello Kitty Golden Knight on set here at Studio 31. We'll get to that later, but now it's an adornment here on our desk.
What a great start. My first show.
Doug continues.
Welcome. Well, that's great. First star of the week. Tomas Hertl
Hertl
in the NHL. 8 points during the week. Had multi-point performances in 3 of those 4. And, of course, the 5-point game yesterday, career high for Tomas Hertl in the 7-2 win against his former team. When you do it against your former team, and the Golden Knights, this, of course, happens when you're an expansion team and you get all these players from different teams. They seem to go up against their former team, and most of the time they seem like they get a little payback. I'm not sure if that's the way that they like to phrase it. But
it's sure, especially in the first couple of seasons where every game for the Golden Knights was a revenge game. It was a nightly event. Say, I'm just thinking William Karlsson, he had played for 2 different teams. The joke was when the team went to Columbus, Jonathan Marchessault asked him, do you think they'll play you a tribute video? And Karlsson's response was, no, I only scored 15 goals last year. And then, of course, Karlsson was in the midst of scoring 43 in the inaugural Golden Knights season. So, no doubt that was a big theme in the inaugural year, 17-18. But it continues to be a theme for the guys who have come here. Just a little bit different because at the time in 2017, the players who were on the Golden Knights roster were lovingly known as Golden Misfits. They had been cast off. They were not protected, or they were traded here. And obviously a handful of standout performers, but most of them, excelled here for the first time at the NHL level. Marchessault had scored 30 in Florida, but he had not really been an NHL guy. We talked about Carlson. Smith had been steady, but really rose to a new level of prominence. The biggest star, of course, was Marc-Andre Fleury. I digress. To your point, Doug, you've got players who've come in more recent years who chose to come here because of what the franchise has built here. You go back to Mark Stone or Max Pacioretty or Paul Stastny, and then Alex Pietrangelo, and you could go down the list, and Tomas Hertl, of course, but Jack Eichel. But you would have to think of the most recent star to arrive in Las Vegas. Mitch Marner gets to play his old team in just a couple of days. The Toronto Maple Leafs are in town on Thursday, and of course Vegas is soon headed to Toronto. So that's the latest one. It's a little bit of a different feeling now when it's stars playing against their old club, whereas in the first year it was misfits or guys who had been overlooked wanting revenge. I don't think Marner needs revenge against the Maple Leafs. Hertl doesn't need revenge against the Sharks. Those guys were very good for those franchises and have fond things to say. So it's always interesting, but it is a little bit of a different feel now when a player goes up against his old club compared to the earlier years. So Hertl and Bruce Cassidy were asked about this yesterday. Why? Why have the Golden Knights had so much success playing against the San Jose Sharks? And Hertl ought to be the best person to answer that question because he's been on both sides of it for all these years. And he really had no answer. He's I don't know. It's just it's an interesting thing. We interviewed him live on the radio in the first period. Obviously, at that point, he had not recorded 5 points, and it was a 1-1 tie at that point. So I think that it's the Knights have been a better team for most of those 9 years. But year 1 and year 2, Knights and Sharks were both playoff teams. Knights won a playoff series in 2018. Sharks won it in 7 games in 2019. But this is the first time since then that the Sharks have really been in a playoff position. They were 5 games over 500 going into the game yesterday. That had been the highest since their 2019 season. And, of course, they were at a playoff spot. So with Macklin Celebrini, a totally different-looking San Jose Sharks team than what we saw years ago. Fun to watch. Golden Knights snapped his 13-game scoring streak. Yep. He had 27 points in 13 games. That comes to a close. It was also -4. So there's not a really good answer other than, the Knights have been a really good team for 9 years, and the Sharks are in the division, so you got to play them a lot. And beyond that, I'm not sure that there's all that much of an explanation.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy to think. Play the Sharks a bunch every season. Yeah. No regulation losses at SAP Center. Just amazing. Amazing stuff. I'm sure we'll dive a little bit deeper into that Mitch Marner against his former team coming up. There was somewhat of an awkward end there with the fans getting on him a little bit over the last couple of years in the playoffs.
That market, man. They
very tough.
When you haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1967, it's tough. You expect your stars to deliver, and that group of core guys finally got a playoff series win, but they still haven't quite gotten to the promised land. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting discussion, and I know Mitch will be very much the center of attention when Maple Leafs come here in just a couple of days.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. Golden Knights on this 5-game point streak. They've won 4 in a row, but that was after a bit of a tough stretch where the Golden Knights had struggled coming really out of the 2025 into 2026. They lost 2 games to start the new year, and now they've won 4 in a row. They were dealing with a bunch of injuries at that point. They get Shea Theodore back. Seems like that's a major key in how this team runs.
Yeah. Well, you go winless in 5. It wasn't 5 regulation losses in a row. It was 3. So if you look at it, a couple different ways, the Knights have 4 straight wins, but points in 5 straight.
Yep.
The Dads trip historically had been such a success that the team had never lost in regulation with the Dads on board, 11-0-1, until this year where they, of course, had the loss in St. Louis and then the overtime loss in Chicago. So the Dads didn't get to see a win this year. That's the first time that had happened. And, I think that probably didn't sit well with some of the guys. And then in Winnipeg, you're down. Luke Schenn scores in the second period. And you're thinking, we're not going to let this happen anymore. And something clicked. Mark Stone scores a power play goal in the midst of what ends up as a 7-game goal-scoring streak. I am not surprised. I don't think it's a coincidence that it was Mark Stone who scores that goal, because on the Chicago game, Vegas went nearly a period, about 18 minutes, without a shot on goal. That was a disheartening showing because Chicago had been struggling themselves. The Knights only had 15 shots for the game, and they just couldn't quite hold on to the lead there. They couldn't battle back and win the game. They lose in overtime. They got a standings point, but it was about as hollow a standings point as I think the team has had this year. And then so you go into Winnipeg, and the Jets, of course, had been winless in 10. They end up winless in 11. It's a strange feeling to go into that building for a team that the Knights have seen in the playoffs twice, that last year won the President's Trophy, that has been so successful last year, Hellebuck, a Vezina, a Hart Trophy, and all of that. To go in there and to feel that strain for the Jets, and you're thinking, oh boy, this is always a big game when the Knights go to Winnipeg. Yep. And then you're trailing, Schenn scores that goal, but the team that looked maybe tentative, perhaps, I think I even used the word scared at times when they were in Chicago, that all ended, and they looked much more like the team that you'd expect to see. They just shed any of that discomfort, whatever was, had befallen the team. And from that point on, through the middle of the Winnipeg game, obviously they win that one, and then home against Columbus, home against St. Louis, and now the road game against the Sharks yesterday, they have just looked much more like themselves. Now, part of that, maybe Jack Eichel's timing had been off. He had missed 7 games, took him a couple to get going again. Jack has looked like himself once more. As you mentioned, Shea Theodore returning. He had missed 11. But remember, those guys, Eichel and Theodore, missed 7 games in a row, the same 7 games after the Columbus road game. And, in the midst of that, you lose Braden McNabb. Obviously, earlier this year, you lost William Karlsson and Aiden Hill. But in terms of the recent success, why was the team winning? They had that great 5-game trip against the Metro. You had that group clicking, basically. And then you take out 2 of the key cogs, your top forward and top defenseman, and you've got to recalibrate. And in the midst of the recalibration, then McNabb comes out. And you throw in the Carter Hart injury the other day. So I think Theodore's return works out perfectly, because even before Shea returned, and Bruce said this in our pregame interview the other day, the team was much better in terms of retrieving pucks, the defensemen transporting it out to the forwards, and just playing faster. And Theodore returns and just exacerbates that success with his speed. And no coincidence there. I think that the Knights have scored 12 goals in 2 games since Shea returned, and playing with Jeremy Lauzon, not Braden McNabb. It's been a long time since Shea Theodore was in the lineup and was not playing with Braden McNabb, because McNabb had played 298 consecutive games and has only missed a handful in his Golden Knights career. So good to see Lauzon and Theodore kind of click right away. But, 12 goals in 2 games and consecutive wins. That's pretty good, too.
Yeah, Lauzon has been very noticeable as well in the last couple of games. I've obviously listening to your broadcasts every night. He's yet to score a goal with the Golden Knights, but
he's been close.
He has been close more than a handful of times over the last couple of games. Some good opportunities. Stabilizing force on the back end. Sometimes when a team goes through that losing stretch, you don't know where to point. You don't know what to look at. Well, injuries definitely aided in that tough stretch for the Golden Knights. They seem to be getting healthier now, of course, still without Braden McNabb. They had a couple Silver Knights on their D-Corps that were rotating in and out. Thought Dylan Coghlan played well.
Yeah,
in
first
his
Golden
action.
Knights game in 4 years for Dylan Coghlan.
Yeah.
89th as a Golden Knight, and away for a few years, 2 years with Carolina and a year with Winnipeg, but much of that time was either as a healthy scratch or in the minors. Yeah. And one of the guys that we always enjoyed having here when he was with the Chicago Wolves, the Knights American League affiliate at the time, but then, of course, with the Golden Knights, played over 50 games with Vegas in 21-22. And, Dylan spoke with us after that game that he played here at home, and spoke about Kelly McCrimmon, how whenever the Golden Knights were either in Carolina or Winnipeg, Kelly would make a point to go up to him and check in, see how he's doing. Gary had asked Dylan the very important question, what do you think it says about you? And that Kelly would reacquire you. I mean, there's only been 2 players acquired by this organization twice, Riley Smith and Dylan Coghlan. And I think if you put Dylan Coghlan in that sort of same sentence as Riley Smith. I think that tells you what the Golden Knights think of who Dylan Coghlan is, and also the hockey player that he continues to grow.
Yeah, and he was blasting away the other night to the Silver Knights from the point, which is what he does. And I was flipping through the Team Media Guide magazine that's over on your desk earlier today, and I saw the babyface Dylan Coghlan picture from the inaugural season. So he's playing well, of course, with the Silver Knights, top D-man over there. Hit a quick break first. Want to let you guys know about Kids Day with the Vegas Golden Knights on Monday, January 19th. The Vegas Golden Knights battle the Philadelphia Flyers at 5 p.m. Special ticket packages start at $70 each and include a limited edition VGK hockey glove backpack. The Golden Knights also are offering a pregame brunch package at T-Mobile Arena starting at 1 p.m. This event will include a meet and greet, autographs, special appearances by Chance and the VGK cast. Special ticket and brunch packages start at $110. And they also include the limited edition VGK backpack, which we do have on the set here. I know you see it if you're watching on our streaming platforms, but I got one of these backpacks right here.
Do I get one of the backpacks as well?
I think you need to replace your briefcase with it, though.
Oh, well,
it looks
that's
professional.
Nice.
Look at that.
I like
Pop
that.
It over your shoulder. Very fashionable.
Fashionable on some people.
I think it looks good. Little glove backpack. Beautiful.
Meaning Doug and not me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
what I was
Thank
going
you.
for there. No, it's great. I like it. I like the little side pouch there, some Velcro. This is great.
This is
it's
real
a nice
nice.
zipper. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
All right,
impressed.
January 19th.
I'm gonna get my hands on one of those.
Backpack brunch. Love to see you there when the Golden Knights face off with the Flyers. Well, Dan, I made it through the first segment.
You did. Way
right?
to go.
Right. All right. So we'll step out, come on back, continue to talk. This is Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas. Nighttime at Noon rolls on. Doug Lattuca, Dan D'uva. Good first segment, chatting about the Golden Knights 7-2 win over the Sharks. Little Tomas Hertl, Shea Theodore. Good stretch for the Knights as they have flipped the calendar to 2026 and have started to play some great hockey. Getting healthy, which is, of course, important. Still, of course, missing Brandon McNabb. But in goal, seems like it was a question from the start, right? Aiden Hill gets hurt. Carter Hart signs but isn't eligible to come to the Golden Knights until December. It's been cast of characters, insertion, puzzle piecing for Bruce Cassidy, and now Carter Hart leaves the game against Columbus on the 8th of January early on. Kira Schmid comes in, does a nice job in relief, but right now it's Akira Schmid and Carl Lindbaum for the Golden Knights.
Yeah, it's exasperating is what it is, especially when you look, say, to San Jose, and they've only had 2 goaltenders play games this year. Plus, they just got Laurent Brossoit from the Blackhawks organization. I always will go back to how the Knights handled things in 2017 when Marc-Andre Fleury got a knee in the head from Anthony Mantha, Game 4, missed 2 months, and what Paul Maurice said about the Golden Knights over the course of those 2 months, that because Fleury, really the only bona fide superstar on the team at the time, Vegas had to figure out how to win games without Marc-Andre Fleury, rather than what everybody expected they'd do, rely on Marc-Andre Fleury to win games. And, of course, by the time Marc came back, it was against Carolina, 1 game before they played the Penguins. Of course, he was going to try to get back for that game. And what do you know? The Knights had put themselves at the very top of the standings. December was a month for the ages. The great win against Tampa Bay, the win against the Kings right after Christmas, and Drew Doughty's bulletin board material. We'll see who's in first place at the end of the season. The Knights were, and then swept the Kings in the first round of the playoffs. I digress, Doug. I digress. Point is,
I'm sure everyone listening probably does like to hear that.
The point is that the Knights had to figure a lot of things out without Marc-Andre Fleury, and then go through Malcolm Subban, who got hurt, Oscar Dansk, who got hurt, and then Max Legacy, and then even Dylan Ferguson, who was an emergency recall from Kamloops. He was in the WHL. He was 18 years old, and he got some minutes. So the Knights used 5 goalies. Then fast forward, 2023, we know the Knights are going to win the Stanley Cup, and at one point in the spring, in the regular season, they won 4 games in a row with 4 different goalies. And I couldn't believe it, but it's true. That had never happened before in the NHL, that you'd win 4 in a row with 4 different goalies. And at the time, you still had, the acquisition of Jonathan Quick, but you had Aiden Hill, Logan Thompson, Laurent Brossoit, and then Yuri Patera, who was one of those 4 goalies. He ended up going back to the American League, of course. But the point is that this is starting to feel like that, where, the Knights are dealt a goaltending curveball, and they're handling it with aplomb. Obviously, it's been different players in front of the goalie over the years. The goalies themselves are different over the years, but I think it speaks to how this culture has built itself, man-up type of mentality. And I think that just the shots against over the last handful of games bears that out. It was, obviously yesterday with the Sharks, the Knights did a great job in front of Lindbaum, and San Jose was held to 20 shots exactly. The game before that, the Blues had 19. Blue Jackets, an overtime game, 24. Winnipeg, in an overtime game, 20. Chicago, 20. St. Louis, 19. Nashville, 19. Now, not all of those were wins, but there is a trend there that the Knights are not giving up a lot of shots on goal, and in particular, the attempts are low as well. It was 45 attempts yesterday for the San Jose Sharks, and they scored twice on Lindbaum. My point is here, with all of the goaltending curveballs, the organization has found pieces, acquiring Akira Schmid last year. Of course, this year, bringing in Carter Hart. And what do you know? The youngest goalie in the NHL, Carl Lindbaum, has won his last 2 NHL games. He'd gone winless in the first 6, but then beats the Sharks back in November, goes back to the AHL, very good there, gets the call back up. Knights playing back-to-back. Schmid playing the home game against the Blues the other day on Saturday. So Lindbaum plays in San Jose and gets the win. So consecutive wins in the NHL for Lindbaum, even though they were separated by about 5 weeks. I'm impressed with how the organization has handled it, making the right moves, but also the goalies themselves, and credit to Sean Burke for preparing those guys. And And, Freddie Brathwaite, you got up and down the whole organization, Mike Rosati, to make sure that these guys are in their best position to succeed. And, Lindbaum's fun to watch. In the American League, you could tell me about this, Doug, but 38 saves on 39 shots in his last Henderson game.
Yeah, I mean, he's been oftentimes the reason why the Silver Knights are winning games. With the AHL being called up injuries with the Golden Knights, they've lost a bunch of players, specifically on the back end, whether it's their captain, Jacob Megna, Dylan Coghlan we've mentioned. They've lost multiple defensemen for week-to-week injuries in a Lucas Johansson and a Lucas Cormier. You talk about puck-moving defensemen, how Shea Theodore impacts the Golden Knights. Cormier, Johansson, they impact the Silver Knights on the back end. And Lindbaum just seems to always be in the right spot for the Silver Knights, making a huge save, one-timers in front, scrambling, diving. He's always
competes.
there.
He competes.
He's not a big guy, but he somehow gets in the right position, and that's important when you're not a big-time goaltender. You typically are okay down low. You got to watch up high, obviously, when you go down into the butterfly. But he's an athletic goaltender. He's fun. He's a nice guy when you talk to him in the locker room, just a happy guy.
He's been on this show as a guest.
Yeah.
And I think Gary said something to me like, Dan, that interview, one of you was extremely well-spoken and the other one of you is a professional broadcaster. That's how well-spoken Carl Lindbaum is in our interview setting, and he's like that off mic, too. And to think, he's from Sweden. English is not really his first language. But great to see his family. Of course, he had made his debut in Tampa. And the fun story was his mom had been a student abroad in Tampa years earlier and kept in touch with the host family there, the Billett family in Tampa. So when Carl was ready to make his NHL debut, coincidence, it was in Tampa. And so Carl's parents came over, and I saw them in the elevator in Tampa. It was like, oh, you're the parents. And they're also with the Billett family, so they had remained in touch over the years. So how perfect that he got to make his NHL debut in that city. Of course, tough that the Lightning are very good offensively. Carl was great. Knights ended up losing in overtime in that game, but just a great story, great person, and still the youngest goalie in the NHL. He's 22. He's going to turn 23 in a couple of months, but still to be at that point in his career to look like he belongs in the NHL. Gary said it on the radio. At that point right now, you're thinking, he's probably too good for the AHL, but, is he not quite ready to be an everyday NHL guy? When you're 22, 23, it's like quadruple A, right? Baseball, triple A. Are you a major leaguer? Not quite yet, but you're probably too good for triple A baseball, and maybe that's the spot Lindbaum is in. But when the Knights have called upon him, he's been good.
Yeah, where were you when you were 22?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little more recent more recent for me.
Yeah.
I can pinpoint where I was, but it was certainly not starting games for the Vegas Golden Knights.
No, ECHL. Trenton Devils.
There you go.
Even Trenton makes, the world takes. Golden Knights scout Vince Williams was an assistant coach there, and Vince had played for the team at the time. They were known as the Trenton Titans when Vince played, and the head coach, the very first coach of the Trenton Titans, was Bruce Cassidy in 1999. I was there like a decade later. But,
wow.
But, all these fun connections. And the ECHL is going back to Trenton, New Jersey, starting next year. The Grizzlies in Utah are relocating to Trenton, New Jersey. They haven't had a team there, minor league team, of course, in Trenton or in New Jersey since the Devils/Titans wrapped up operations more than a decade ago. So there you go. There's your answer. That's a long time ago. It's ancient history now, Doug.
Yeah, well, not really. Don't age yourself too much.
I'll tell you, and I've told the story before, I found video of Bruce Cassidy getting interviewed in 1999. And this is where, first year they're documenting the new franchise there in Trenton, New Jersey. And Bruce is getting interviewed, and the interviewer off camera asks something like, years from now, when people look back on the inaugural season of the Trenton Titans, what do you want them to say about you? And Bruce says, well, I don't know. I'll, I hope I give him a good story to tell. And, I pull up this video and I show Bruce during the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs when they're following around with a video camera. And he said, oh, that's really cool. And he said, you got to send me that. I said, well, sure. He said, no, you don't understand. I got to show that video to my wife so she could see what I had for hair back then. And it was good. So that's on the internet somewhere.
I'd love to see.
Bruce Cassidy, Trenton Titans interview from 1999. So there you go.
That's amazing.
There's always a story behind every
Carl
question.
Lindbaum, Trenton Titans. Bruce Cassidy.
And
had hair
That's
back
right.
then.
And Bruce's wife is from New Jersey. They didn't meet in New Jersey. They met in D.C., but Bruce's wife is actually from New Jersey originally.
Wow.
There you go.
So were you?
Yeah, that is also the case, yes.
Brilliant. We were talking about Lindbaum.
Oh, sure, right.
I think the final point, and then we'll step out for a quick break. But you touched on this at the start of the segment. When you know you have an inexperienced goaltender or a guy that doesn't have much work time in the NHL, a guy that's still figuring it out, even if it's a backup situation, Rangers are dealing with that right now with Jonathan Quick. Of course,
Sure,
he
yeah.
is a veteran that has been a starter and a multi-time Stanley Cup champion, but still, when your starting goaltender goes down, the guy that you rely on to put in the goal 5 out of 6 games, keep going. Seems like the defense, there's like something going on in their brain. Okay, let's sharpen up a little bit. Let's be tighter. Let's block some more shots. Let's keep everything to the outside. That seems like what the Golden Knights have done, and maybe what they've done in the past as well with some of their goaltending injuries that they've had.
Yeah, Noah Hannafin talked about this a few games ago. I talked to him on the pregame show before the Columbus game, and this was talking about what had happened in Winnipeg and so on. And he brought up a distinction that the coaching staff had made between just defending versus checking. And so that the Knights defenders were being a bit more proactive is sort of the sense that I got of it. I'm sort of paraphrasing what Noah said, but I found that was an interesting distinction to just, to take it to the other team rather than, just waiting to defend and reacting to the other team, that you would be more active in checking the opposing team and making it harder for the other team. I went through the shots against, of course. And then, the other part of it, Doug, is the schedule. We know this year is condensed with respect to the Olympic break that will be coming starting February 7th. Knight's last game is the 6th. The last Knight's game is February 5th. But between now and then, including the back-to-backs the Knights just had against St. Louis and San Jose, 5 back-to-backs in a month.
Yeah.
5 back-to-backs in
Crazy.
a month. And that means in the NHL these days, you're likely not to have goalies play both of them. If you're in a more typical schedule, you're playing every other day with an occasional back-to-back, you can lean on one goalie more so, if you really do have a number one goalie. And the Knights probably have 2 number one goalies, yet
both hurt.
but they're both hurt right now. But Akira Schmid has played the most games for the Knights this year and has proven that he could do it. And remember the great playoff series against the Rangers a couple years ago. I digress again. So you've got the back-to-back that just happened, St. Louis and San Jose. Coming up this week, Wednesday, Thursday, at LA, home against Toronto. Then the 22nd and 23rd at Boston, at Toronto. Then the 31st of January, 1st of February, home against Seattle, at Anaheim. Then the 4th and 5th, home Vancouver, home LA. So it's 5 back-to-backs in a month. I don't think that's ever happened before for the Golden Knights. And so my point is that it's more likely than not that you're not using the same goalie in both of those games. Normal circumstances, you probably could. So Aiden Hill has been practicing with the team. Carter Hart's out week to week. So I don't think, when we're talking week to week, you're expecting to see him before the Olympic break. I don't know that, but week to week indicates to me that probably not. Hill, though, has been practicing with the team. Bruce Cassidy doesn't have a timetable, but you figure if he's practicing with the team, he's pretty close.
Yeah.
Theodore had just one practice,
so
we'll see. So, in other words, how the Golden Knights handle the next few weeks, condensed schedule, multiple back-to-backs, you're going to be using 2 goalies, or 3, depending on what happens. Obviously, they used Schmid for the home game against St. Louis and Lindbaum for the game in San Jose. Both were winners. So we'll see how that unfolds. But the point is, over the next few weeks, the Knights are going to have to use multiple goaltenders. They won't be able to lean on just one guy.
We'll dive a little deeper into the condensed schedule after the break. And how have we gone the whole show without talking really Jack Eichel? The guy's unbelievable as well. We started with Tomas. Exactly.
What number does he wear?
Exactly. I believe he wears number 9.
Oh, okay. Just check.
There you go. So we'll touch on all that after the break. And fans, you spoke. The Golden Knights listen. The new VGK Locals menu is now available at all of the team's home games. The menu features hot dogs, nachos, water, fountain soda, pretzels, and popcorn for just $5.50 each. Season ticket members also receive an additional 10% off all concessions, including the VGK Locals menu. Go Knights, go. Mentioned we'll touch on that schedule. A whole lot more coming up next on Nighttime at Noon here on Fox Sports Las Vegas. It is 12:38. This is Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas. The Golden Knights have launched VGK Pay, presented by America First Credit Union, as a centralized payment system within the official VGK mobile app. VGK Pay is the smart way to pay for concessions and team gear at T-Mobile Arena and the Arsenal at City National Arena. Come on by. Fans are eligible to earn rewards known as Fortress Funds, and season ticket members can easily redeem their discounts when using VGK Pay. The VGK mobile app is available for iOS and Android devices in the App Store and Google Play stores. I'm Doug Lattuca with Dan D'uva, the voice of the Golden Knights on the radio side. We also have Hello Kitty here, who we'll introduce a little bit later.
I thought this was a
detail.
two-person show.
Wait, Katie, can you get her a headset, please? I think we need,
a third member of the talent on the show? Oh, wow, getting more FaceTime than some of us as well.
She is by far better. Well, I don't know, better looking, but definitely cuter than we are. So I think if we just kept the camera on Hello Kitty, I think the viewers would be a lot happier.
There you
go. But anyway, the condensed schedule that we were chatting about before the break, the Olympics coming up in Milan.
Fingers crossed.
Well, yes, I did hear that update that Gary had given a couple broadcasts ago. Positive. There were some positives from some of the players that were testing despite that hole in the ice.
Yeah, that was more, I think that for those who don't know, that would be alarming, a hole in the ice. Yeah. But really for the folks who are overseeing it, it's actually, part of the general course of installing a new ice sheet. So, Chris Johnston has been over there. Multiple members of the media have been on location. And so it seems like the ice itself will be fine. But I think some of the locker room facilities are not quite ready yet.
Yes,
some
I
of
did
those
see
things.
that.
So that it's going to go right down to the wire. We still have a month, but there was a professional hockey player who's from Canada,
Yep.
who's playing for an Italian team, who had sent some photographs and video to Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet. And there are clear gaps in the construction. But again, that's not to say that the ice won't be ready. They have been playing on the ice surface. As the construction continues, the ice was a little bit dirty, so of course they'll continue to work on that. But we're a few weeks away. But it's all signs point to hockey happening in Milan. So fingers crossed that things continue on that trajectory.
Yeah, when I was in Danbury last couple of years, I would walk into the arena post-summer, and they would be putting down the brand-new ice,
Sure.
and it would be an overnight process. You'd walk in there the next day, the whole entire arena is foggy. Like it was just smoke everywhere, but all just differing temperatures. You're probably putting the ice back in late August-ish, depending on how much money they want to spend on putting the ice in and how much use they're going to get out of it over the summer.
Yeah, and we're seeing with these outdoor games in Florida, they just had one in Miami. They're having one shortly in Tampa. And in Miami's baseball stadium, they had the roof closed for the ice construction. They removed the roof, or they retracted the roof. So it was truly an outdoor game. The football stadium in Tampa does not have a retractable roof, so they have built a temporary structure, almost like, imagine a massive tent, like you were having a wedding or something, an outdoor wedding, but it covers the entire sheet of ice, and they've built it in such a way that it can be left up until warm-ups and then broken down right before the game. Because, it's Tampa, and it's humid and rainy there at times, even in January. But that, why not? Everybody should have the excitement of hosting an outdoor game, or at least in a special venue. Whether the roof is open or closed, it's not really an outdoor game. Well, of course not really. But, in Vancouver, they had one where the roof was closed. That's years ago now. Speaking of your alma mater and mine, Syracuse, they played in the Carrier Dome, Syracuse Crunch. That it's technically an indoor venue, but it's a football stadium, right? So it's a different feel than a typical hockey arena. They had over 30,000 people for that minor league hockey game a few years ago. So it's fun. It's a special event. We got the news of Utah hosting one next year, which is very exciting for that franchise. It's just a marquee event that some people say, it's not the same as it used to be. It should be in a cold weather place. Gobbledygook, as far as I'm concerned.
Win the Stanley Cup then. That's what happens. I mean, when you win a couple Stanley Cups,
sure.
And, the Lightning prior to this Panthers run, I mean, those have been two of the most successful franchises in the NHL.
Yeah,
they love hockey down in Florida because they're all coming from the East Coast or from those colder spots.
It was so neat for the Golden Knights to play in Seattle at the home of the Mariners New Year's Day a couple of years ago. Of course, in 2021, the Knights played at Lake Tahoe. There were no fans because of the COVID situation. I loved the imagination from the NHL to put a hockey rink on a golf course next to a lake in the mountains. It was spectacular. I mean, I was with Gary broadcasting the games, very fortunate to be there to paint the word picture. I would love to see some additional creativity. I don't know how easy it is to construct a temporary venue, but like, say, Northwestern football, they're renovating their main stadium, so they built a temporary stadium right on the lake there near Chicago, and really, really neat. So, Steve and the crew at the NHL, they just do a fantastic job preparing for these events, whether it's the outdoor games or the All-Star games, the Stanley Cup Final. I just get excited for what they're going to come up with each year.
Yeah, it's always great. The Winter Classic's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Not sure I'm a big fan of them moving it to the 2nd of January. I understand it's tough to compete with college football. It's the same thing, NFL, whatever it is. If it lands on a Sunday, you always end up in a tough spot. And now Saturdays, that they've just taken over every day.
Yeah. Well, the hockey fans will be there. Great ratings for the game that happened this year as well.
Yeah. So in Milan, a couple new players were named to the team. We knew the USA roster and the Canadian roster, but you had 8 players that were named Overall, we had a couple of players named last week, including a Silver Knight and Jonas Ronbjerg, who will play for Denmark. Of course, Tomas Hertl, Akira Schmid will play for their respective countries. So it should be a lot of fun. But before they go out to the Olympics, this condensed schedule that's going to have you flying all over the place, back and forth, and me on the radio here.
Yeah.
Well, on our sister channel in doing some Silver Knights games almost every night. We'll
Yeah.
have you once, Brian McCormick the other day, kind of just
That's
going
fun
back and
stuff.
forth. Games,
This is what we live for. So I love it. I mean, I wouldn't want to play 7 days a week. I might lose my voice if that were the case, but
a lot of tea.
I love it. Yeah, that's right. Where's the honey and the ginger and everything? It's interesting, Doug, because there's also the trade freeze that occurs during the Olympic break. And with the condensed schedule, you're still playing more than half of the season prior to the Olympic break. You're going to feel like Olympics come that's halfway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's really not the case. You've got March and April. It's really less than 2 months of hockey after the Olympic break ends. So over the course of that Olympic break, you'd imagine that there would be some discussion among general managers about making some transactions that cannot be executed until after the Olympics end. So where teams are at the February 5th point in time, especially this year. Columbus is at 500. New York Rangers are at 500. Those are the 2 last-place teams in the Eastern Conference. Yeah. Imagine that for a second. If you're in last place, you're expecting teams to have a losing record. In the Eastern Conference, nobody has a losing record.
Yep.
Nobody has a losing record. That's, of course, because there are these 3-point games. In the Western Conference, 4 clubs are under 500. Flames, Blues, Jets, and Canucks. Canucks are now last in the NHL at 37 points. But above those teams, it's tight. Vegas atop the Pacific Division at 54 points. Oilers 3 back. Knights do have a game in hand. And then the Sharks, 5 points back of the Golden Knights. Mm-hmm. And then the 2 wildcard teams in the West are both in the Pacific Division. Kraken and Kings at 48. Utah with 48 as well, but because the tiebreaker, they're on the outside looking in. But even, if you go down, we've been talking about the Jets. I mean, the Jets are 9 points out of a playoff spot. They've had a disastrous run.
Yep.
Disastrous run, but they've now won 2 in a row.
Even Vancouver's 11 points out of a playoff spot. I know they're all the way out.
They just don't have the horses. At least Winnipeg, you could imagine it because they've got Hellebuck, and they won the President's Trophy last year. So the Buffalo Sabres had that amazing streak, and what do you know? They are in the number 1 wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. So if you go on a couple of streaks, Buffalo had won 11 and they lost, but now they've won 3 in a row again. So it can happen. Then other teams have just fallen off, like, say, the New Jersey Devils. They're now well outside of a wild card spot at 46 points. The Capitals and Bruins are tied at 52, along with the Sabres. So it is funky to see what the next week, couple of weeks will look like before the break. What are the standings like? Do some teams create separation? Do other teams completely fall off, as we've seen, like I said, with the New Jersey Devils as an example, who've lost 4 in a row. The Senators have lost 4 in a row. Some turmoil in both of those organizations. The Lightning have won 9 in a row.
Yeah.
Gary talked about it on Lawless and Order yesterday. Why John Cooper should win the Jack Adams Award this year, and not just because of his resume over the course of years. I mean, John Cooper is the longest tenured coach in the National Hockey League. Has been the head coach of the Lightning since 2013, replacing Guy Boucher at the end of the season. They missed the playoffs that year, but they've basically never missed since then. Been to the finals 4 times, won it twice. And Gary making the case for why Cooper should win the Jack Adams this year. Obviously, there will be additional candidates. We still have half a season to go. But the point is, the standings are bunched in both conferences. There are going to be fewer sellers if a team believes that it's still in it. So other teams are going to have to make those hard choices, like, okay, like, technically we still could get back into this, but, for the future, let's make some moves now. And then, like, if you're, let's say, the New Jersey Devils, you thought you were going to be a playoff team, and now you're not. So what do you do there? It is head-scratching. This has got to be, in both conferences, throw in the Olympic wrinkle this year. This is going to be a fascinating trade deadline going into, obviously, the Olympic break, roster freeze, and then, of course, what happens immediately thereafter.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to fall behind with all of these games, and you'd have to think that these next couple of weeks very important in determining if you are a player for the playoffs or if you are going to sell. It might be a little earlier than that normal trade deadline. Teams might, as you mentioned, that trade freeze, but after that, teams might just be like, okay, this is it, or even before that, right?
So
it might be.
And just with respect to dates, the trade deadline this year is March 6th.
Yep.
March 6th, the Golden Knights return to play February 25th. So you're going to play the 20th. Let me count real quick. 25th, 27th, 5 games before the Olympic break. No, let me try that again. 5 games. When play resumes after the Olympics, the Knights will have 5 games before the trade deadline. So it's not right after the Olympics. It's just over a week. And then, by the way, the Knights do play on trade deadline day this year. It is March 6th. The Knights have a home game that day against Minnesota. Okay. So, yeah, coming out of the Olympic break, the trade deadline will be just over a week away.
Decisions to be made. We will take a quick break. Come on back, hit you with a couple quick topics, talk about Hello Kitty, and a lot more coming up next on Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas. Approaching the end of Nighttime at Noon, fans celebrate the iconic Hello Kitty with the Vegas Golden Knights at T-Mobile Arena on Thursday, January 29th, when the team battles the Dallas Stars at 7 o'clock. Special ticket packages start at $85 each and include a limited edition Golden Knights Hello Kitty plush. It's a must-have for any collector, and I will say it is absolutely adorable and very soft.
Must have.
Yeah, Katie's
Is that
already claimed
there?
this one, by the way. This is already claimed. I wanted to put it in the middle of my dining room table. I have no furniture, so I have no decorative furniture. I was going to put it right in the middle as a centerpiece.
What's there on the bottom of the foot? Is that a couple of hockey sticks? Wow. Very
And
cool.
a bow.
And a bow.
There we
That's
go.
what it is.
Brilliant.
It's a puck. There you go. Zoom in. Thank you, Andrew.
Brilliant.
You've got a puck there and a bow. Wow. Very cool.
Brilliant.
Very cool.
Brilliant.
Hello, Kitty.
January 29th. Stars are in town. Come
Nice.
on by. Should be great. Looking forward to it. Rapid fire, a couple of guys.
Running out of
time. We promised
time.
you a couple of things on this show, so let's get to it. Jack Eichel, Mark Stone. When you're talking about the Vegas Golden Knights, you have to bring them up. They've just been that good.
And while Stone missed 16 and Eichel missed 7, it's no surprise that both of them are over 40 points at this stage of the season. Stone ties the franchise record for goals in consecutive games. Though he didn't get a goal yesterday, still
When you
extended
score
his
7
point streak.
goals, you thought Stone might get
Yeah,
one.
gosh.
Maybe another empty netter.
But he got a few assists, so his
He did.
scoring streak is at 8. Eichel has now scored goals in 3 straight. Eichel owns the franchise record for points streak at 12. Stone, the assist streak at 9, and now also tied for the goal streak at 7. So, yeah, Eichel's having a great stretch. Like I said earlier, a little bit of getting his timing back after he missed 7, but the last few games very much looks like Jack Eichel. But neck and neck with Mitch Marner for the team scoring lead. That's been a fun back and forth.
If you want to win, your best players have to be your best players, and that's been the case. Stone, Marner, Eichel, all those guys. Quickly on the Henderson Silver Knights, points in 9 of their last 11 games. They're
Nice.
starting to get hot. They're starting to get healthy. Doesn't help that they don't have Carl Lindbaum, but Jesper Vikman has stepped right in.
There
I'm
you
sure
go.
Lindbaum will return as well. They got a couple games coming up against the Colorado Eagles this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Brian McCormick has all the play-by-play for you. I'll have the pregame show. Tune in, 12:30 the game. Always a lot of fun. A couple thank yous to hand out. Luis over with Fox Sports Las Vegas. We got Andrew in the back making us look pretty on camera. Katie, great job as always. That's your Hello Kitty. I'm going to toss it to you right now. This is for you. There you go. You get the first one. Dan, that was fun. First show in the books.
Made it through.
We did it. We did it. That has been Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas.